It should work. I can't cheer in my own channel, so I can't look at it, but...
A big reward!
Hey! 20 bits! It happened! Woo! Alright, cool. I will spam the fuck out of you. Thank you so much. How do I send bits? It's in the chat box. There's a little diamond-shaped thing.
A big reward!
And you can send your bits. It's like micro nothingness, but it all adds up eventually. I appreciate you. So many bits! Yes, I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Let me go grab...
Big reward!
Let me go grab PogChamp. Appreciate it. All right. So, Benign Brett. Benign Brett, I guess, is a nice guy. Hello, Benign Brett. Welcome to the stream. I got a burp. Okay, we're good. Everything's fine. Everything's fine.
Hi, Jake.
Hi. How are you doing? Are you gonna make me mad at you like the other guy?
I hope not. I'm a postmodern neo-Marxist, so I don't think he would.
Yeah,
like
no,
me.
we're probably gonna get along because I'm a libtard.
Awesome.
Yeah. I could. So your question is, if I'm not mistaken, and please, by all means, after I'm done, expand on your thoughts because I only get the brief overview. On the stream, I think it was last night, the PO unboxing, I said I didn't know if strict socialism could work with our society, like culturally speaking.
You were a little harsher than that. You said that human nature wouldn't allow it, but sure, whatever.
Okay,
We'll go with that.
so let's.
It's a common thing.
Yeah. So human nature, in general, isn't compatible with something that is
A big reward!
largely selfless. Is kind of my thing. Do you have anything to expand on that so I can make sure?
Yeah. Because okay, so the first thing I want to know, because the whole thing about socialism being selfless is a bit much. That's like saying society, like let's go into the wild because if we have to cooperate as a society, like we're animals, let's blah blah blah. I don't know, but I'm more interested in where your conception of human nature comes from.
I guess technically, I don't know if you can. Is there an example of data sets of humanity that isn't anecdotal?
No, thank you for saying that.
Right, because I don't think you can say like humans in general blank without it being anecdotal.
reward!
Like humans in general, I think besides facts, like have hearts that beat. I think that's a true statement, but it's not anecdotal. But there's some people born without hearts, Real quick, thank you, Daylong Bang. Appreciate you. Floor Muffins is a good band name. I'm sure we'll agree on that. So my thing with something like strict socialism is
Can you tell me what that is?
Yeah. I think like kind of what where everything the production is for the society as a whole. It's not necessarily selling your labor for yourself. Does that make sense? So largely every work endeavor is a selfless act. I'm sure you could find ways to make it selfish. But how would you define it? I want to work within your parameters, and we can work it out. Yeah.
All right. So,
because I am partly socialist. I like a lot of socialist things. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we all benefit from a lot of different small versions of it. Sure.
For sure. And I wish we had a little bit more in this country.
Yeah, let's do it. So hopefully no communists are listening because this is kind of a simplified version. Basically, you have owners. The means of production are owned by the workers, but they're also controlled by the workers.
Right,
so
kind of like Costco.
It's not exactly. I wouldn't say Costco is controlled by all the
Sure.
workers, but they have that sort of share ownership. So there's like an idea that you have your skin in the game. So I don't know. It's capital socialism, if that's even a thing.
Well, when I say strict socialism, I guess I mean a little bit further. It's almost communism.
Her ramble was
Where-
Well, and we don't want to get in the weeds too much because
Right.
it's kind of the same thing. Socialism and communism. Socialism just doesn't have propaganda tied to it. As
Right,
much.
that's where I put the designated difference as well. Is kind of like the way communism is pretty fashy too, in my opinion. It's just a different
Okay.
economic. You know what I'm saying?
Can you tell me what fasci is? I'm sorry.
Like fascist light, where often with communism you have that propaganda machine and sort of this, in human history we do get, although it's not the ideal system that Marx was talking about, but although I think he settles on socialism, doesn't he? Am I crazy? I read the communist, in the Communist Manifesto. Doesn't he settle on, like, the ultimate goal is to get here, but we need communism to get there? Am I crazy? He did overthrow the system. Did you read? Have you read Marx?
Yeah, a bit.
Right.
My attention's a little low. I normally do videos, but
No, you're good.
You have colloquially people think of socialism as kind of like a transitionary period,
Right.
But he just called that lower phase communism, and then you have full communism.
Right. Okay.
At the
Yeah.
end.
Okay. At least in my opinion, and I think you're agreeing with me here as far as what communism is. Communism has that sort of like top layer of. It doesn't have to be a dictator. In human history, it has been, but
yes.
But like
This
that
problem, yeah. We
that
can talk about this.
That and I think apart from it comes across as very fascist dictatory, where they start implementing things, and I know it's not the same, but it rings true enough to where I like to call it fasci a little bit.
Okay.
But socialism to me is not that bad as far as I'm concerned. I just don't think my umbrage, I guess, and we can go back to this in a second. With a society in which capitalism isn't involved at all, in some place, so of a socialist economy where it's just I don't know, no capitalism at all. It just I don't think we can get to a point where humans are, at least not in the near future, where we are selfless enough to let that work. Because I think it would work if everyone was virtuous and selfless, but it doesn't work because we're not. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying. I don't agree with it, but I understand the idea that you just said. Okay.
Sure.
So I really hate that it's been looked at as like a virtuous thing, but I want to start with the thing that you talked about earlier. I'm sure you've seen like a million political compass memes, and those are kind of tied. But one thing that's really useful about it, though, is there is the I don't know what you call that, the vertical axis. I don't know if that's X or Y. I think it's Y. Anyways, towards the top you have authoritarianism, or autocracy, whatever. It's like fewer people doing the actual governing.
It's upper left, I believe, is what our traditional communism has been.
What people think of as that, sure.
Yeah. I think any time we've really done it in human history, it's been co-opted like that into where it's like a really authoritarian. Do we have an example of a really good communist society yet?
I mean, people will try and say that there's a few different things. People will also often talk about like the Paris Commune and things like that, but really these
small examples,
incredibly small. And the reason is because capitalism can't allow something like that.
I would agree with that. I will definitely agree that capitalism gets in the way of these things.
Well, normally with military force, but yes.
Yeah, I agree.
It's getting in the way.
Yeah, I think nations with capitalism get in the way with their military. I don't think capitalism necessitates it. I think it incentivizes it.
That would be pretty cool if it was like an autonomous being, like a super god. That'd be crazy. But I don't believe that. It's weird. But anyways, like I was saying, as you go down, it's democratically controlled, and that's what I like. Some people call that democratic socialism or anarcho-communism. There's like so many different levels.
I don't think it's anarcho if you have a system in any way. I don't think you can have anarchy and a system. That doesn't make sense. Anarchy always ends up being in a system, so I don't think you can have anarcho anything ever. Like, I just don't think it's sustainable. I think you end up like there's that Whitest Kids You Know sketch where they overthrow the system basically, and then well someone's got to take over the nuclear reactor, and the guy says, well, I want to do that, but if I do that, I'm not going to be able to make food, so I better get some extra food, and they literally start an economy right over. That's a funny way to say it, but I think that's exactly what ends up happening in any anarcho situation.
Anarchy is when there's no economy or government?
Not any economy or government. No, there'd be pockets of these things. We've tried that before with the Articles of Confederation, though. We've done this.
You think that a confederate form of government would be anarchy?
It would certainly be. I mean, we've done it before. The Articles of Confederation.
I think what you mean to say is there's centralized and decentralized.
Certainly,
anarchy is just about unjust hierarchies. But like honestly, honestly, this could be like an 8-hour stream.
Absolutely.
And I like talking to you. You're cool, but this is like a lot for just regular people too. So I'll just say we'll stick to just the idea of authoritarian versus like democratic, because that is a thing.
Yeah.
Authoritarian, I mean, you've got material conditions, different countries' perspectives, all this stuff. That's why that's kind of the more prevailing version.
Sure.
The people who argue for that at this point, we call those people tankies, and we don't like them. In my circles.
Yeah. I'm familiar with the tankies.
Yeah, they're apologists, and it's a little exhausting. But yeah. So
see, someone's mentioning that anarchists differentiate between government and state, and they're against state, not government. But a government creates a state. Even if you don't want it to. Even if you don't want it to, you end up in a state.
You, but this is wrong. I'm sorry.
Explain.
Listen.
Explain how. Hold on.
So
let me.
Go ahead.
Explain how you create a government of people and don't end up in a state.
You have to very, very, very. What's the word here? Intentionally create that society, which is why it's so hard, right?
Okay.
So
a stateless government.
Exactly. And do you
know I know those words mean things, but it doesn't actually apply to real life, in my opinion. Explain how you get there. Explain how you do that.
Okay. So
simply as you can.
Yeah, it's not simple, but okay.
See, that's why it's inviolable.
No. It's only underdeveloped. Capitalism is incredibly developed. That's why we have iPhones and all that stuff. We have systems in place to make all that shit not crumble tomorrow. Like, just look at, I mean, if you look at U.S. history, you can see all the dips and crashes, booms, and anyways.
Yeah.
There's a lot of structures supporting capitalism, and these structures actually can create states. So a state force specifically, state is a problem. A government, all government means is like some form of ruling, like
a rule of law.
You have a government. You have a government on your Discord,
right? It's
state backed. You don't have a military,
Right until you. Yeah, but we're not doing a society, right? It's just like that. That's a really, really different. Like, let's say just out in the middle of nowhere. Mm-hmm. Like we mentioned earlier, Montana has lots of space. You create an anarcho-communist society, and the rest of America doesn't exist. It's just wilderness, right? And maybe there's other pockets of people that do the same thing. How does that government not end up in a state with borders and leadership and military force because you need to protect yourselves against other ones that disagree with you? Like, it seems to me to have anarcho-communism, the entire world, or at least you'd have to be very isolated to even pull it off. And I still think, even if you're alone in the universe, even if it's just 80 people on a little island in the whole vast universe, it's still a state. Like, I don't understand how it isn't one. If you have a government.
And honestly, this is not where I spend a lot of time, because I think the whole debate is sort of tired, and I think the human nature thing is the thing where people get hung up most. That's why when you said it, it was like the third time I'd heard it this week, and I was like, okay,
so let's talk about the human nature of why I don't think that would work. Because, of course, we don't live on an island in the middle of nowhere. There are millions of people. There are 300 million people here. And a lot of people, and just in the country, not Canada and Mexico and stuff. You'd have to get rid of the state in general to do that. And then what would happen is you'd have governments that were not unified, which we've done before in the Articles of Confederation on a larger scale. And what happened there, and what happens in a lot of places, the Native American tribes are a good example of kind of libertarian living in an anarcho-communist way, I think, where they are communes, they work together, there's not really money, and barter occurs, but there's also war all the time. And I'm assuming, are you part of the, I forget what it's called now. The, NDA, right?
Antifa?
No,
Oh,
no.
What? No.
No. The no aggression.
No.
The non-aggression pact is it NAP? NAP. That's what I'm thinking of. So you would in fact have to have some sort of protection, right?
So if we're talking about how we get to communism, sure.
I'm just saying once we're there, once we've dissolved the state, right? America doesn't exist. The physical does, but not the construct of borders and all that stuff. And then you create the small government with however many people, right? And you have a thing, and say you live in Montana or whatever. Like, what if someone owns the area, and not even owns, but just occupies?
Wait a second. Did you just trick me into going back to the state argument? Hey, we were talking about the mode of production.
No, I know. Right. No, we're getting there.
About America for a second. Let's just think about
blank slate number one country X.
Sure, whatever.
Okay, but I use America because we know what resources it has, but we can use anywhere. We could say Hawaii or just island with a lake in the middle. It doesn't really matter.
Okay.
It's just easy to visualize the resources in a given area if we use something common. But basically, the idea here is I don't think it works because if someone occupies the area where the fresh water is in the area, I don't think you get that water for free.
Oh, okay. So we're playing Settlers of Catan. Okay.
It's kind of like that, but it's not like we're playing. I mean, it really is an issue that you have to talk about if you're talking about anarcho-communism, right? Because you're not unified.
What you're talking about is trade having to happen, and therefore communism doesn't exist. And you're right.
I agree.
As long as there's still a mixture, it can't actually be communism because of the mode of production.
This is
you're
what
still
I mean.
having to make some sort of commodity for trade.
I agree.
We're not in disagreement.
Yeah.
But in order to get there, yes, you would have to have. I mean, honestly, if we did all the right things, if Donald Trump stepped down and super socialist or whatever took over, we would both be dead before we ever got there. If we did all the right moves very, very quickly. What we talk about doing, like in the meantime, right now, is all the stuff that you're pretty much comfortable with. I think you've talked about healthcare before.
Oh yeah, healthcare, education. I don't think the prisons should be privatized at all. Anything where morality is an important facet. I think we don't have profit. Not profit motives, at least.
Okay, right. Because
I think that corrupts. Like if there's nothing to gain from suffering, if there's nothing to gain, then we do the right thing typically. I think. Or at least we try to, especially if there's laws in place.
I thought I was the human nature cuck.
No. See. I think because a doctor wants to heal people and they get paid to do so, they get compensated pretty nice to do that. But not everyone's a doctor. See, the problem with overall socialism comes to when a guy needs to be the sanitation worker but hates picking up trash. It's not about these life or death situations or these really. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
It gets to a point where there's jobs that we do because we need the money we get from them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, here's a question. When's the last time you cleaned your room?
Clean your room? We cleaned the room. Well, Sarah did it yesterday.
Oh, did you pay Sarah?
No, but she loves me.
Why'd you do it? Oh, because she loves you. And she wanted to have a clean environment.
Right, but hear me out. And I understand where you're going with this because it would make sense. But right now we have a system in place where, say, we put the garbage at the end of the road, and that's the limit of our work, and then it gets taken in a large truck to a place.
Oh, okay. So let's just think about a common area. Have you ever felt the need to clean up or pick anything up in a common area? Just because you, I don't know, had the chance to? Like you've never seen trash just like somewhere and picked it up, thrown it away?
Yeah, certainly people do that, but I also see trash litter a lot of stuff.
You see that now, right?
Right, but not as badly as if we didn't have sanitation.
Oh, we would have sanitation. Sorry. No, I'm not talking about.
But why would we
anarcho.
have sanitation?
Because if not, well, number one, a lot of us would be dying because that's very important work.
Absolutely, but
Number two, humans don't like to live in filth, no matter what Ben Shapiro says about Palestinians.
but not in a selfless regard. I totally agree with you that it would
It
behoove
is
us to
actually
do so.
selfish to clean your room.
Right, but that's
Right.
not what we're talking about. We're talking about picking up everybody else's bullshit. And there's some people that would absolutely do that 100%. I agree with you. But I don't think
But
there's
that's based
enough.
on- That's based on your conception of everybody else's shit.
I think that's
Like, when I
based
go
on human experience in general. I don't think we can count on one another
Whoa,
to
whoa,
take
whoa,
care
whoa,
of our.
What's human experience?
So-
is that like human nature?
Well, no. Well, this is
Is
examples
it a
of
thing
human
that we can't
nature.
define?
It's. I mean, if you're just gonna. I mean, you're just gonna walk around the fact that we all experience a similar life, then. I mean, we can't really
okay.
talk.
So you're saying things that people experience right now. You don't mean like the Aristotle's idea of the ideal human person. You mean like
Aristotle
just how
is
people experience life right
dead
now.
as fuck. He doesn't really apply to today's standards. He's nice
Either
to talk
does
about.
Marx, but he's nice to talk about too.
Well, I know, but Marx is closer to modern day than Aristotle, and while I agree that there's
Ben
snippets
Shapiro is
that you can
alive,
take
but he's
out.
kind of an idiot.
Right. I don't think you're hearing what I'm saying here.
Probably.
Ben, like the closer you get to modernity, the closer your opinions are going to reflect something that we experience as people today. So while parts of Aristotle would resonate, of course, like for instance, Socrates wanted the philosopher kings to rule everything. That doesn't make any sense today. Right?
No.
That doesn't make any sense. But it sounds good. Ideally it sounds good if you think about how small Athens was in relation to what we now perceive and the information we now have. Philosopher kings back then were kind of some of the only really educated people in Athens at the time. And so it would make sense for the highly educated to be. But we all have that information now. So anyways, that's not the point. The point is that that I don't think that selflessness, even if you frame it as a selfish nature, I don't think selflessness overrides the self in a way that would behoove us to be purely non-capitalistic. That said, pure capitalism is worse.
Well, I don't think anyone. I mean, obviously, there's like one or two people like the transphobe, but I don't think serious people would be willing to say that pure capitalism would be.
Yeah, pure capitalism is
worth anything.
That falls apart within 50 years, I think. Maybe sooner. Maybe I don't know how fast automation takes place, but once we have self-driving cars are what's going to kill so many people, and not because of the crashes, because of the economic implication of that if we don't take care of it before that. But that said, there's still places within that framework where I think capitalism really serves the I don't know, there's just the kind of state of being we all experience.
Right, but we experience that state of being through our economic system, right?
Absolutely, but even we've had systems where capitalism is non-existent, and it
Yes.
still ends up being that way.
Thank you for saying that
Yeah.
so much.
And
That
I agree,
capitalism
and I
is
agree
not-
that capitalist societies would influence that, but we haven't always been a global market here.
No, we haven't.
Yeah.
And actually, I think the USSR is one of the few countries that sort of skipped capitalism because they were mostly like feudal. For us, our experience is different. Like on the Marxian side, like we talk about material conditions. So kind of like what you were talking about earlier with Athens, like based on those material conditions, that would be an interesting concept. And that's how you get to those things. So capitalism isn't just like purely bad. It's just so inefficient, and it's no
would agree.
longer helpful, I guess.
I would agree as well in the way that we implement it. I would not agree
Yes.
that it as a concept in general should be gotten rid of. Because, like, I use the example a lot because I think it's easy to illustrate. But, like, I always bring up, like, restaurants. If there's incentive for someone to put in as many hours as one does as a restaurant, because they get compensated outside of what is normal for that, I think that helps. I think that really helps them. I'm not going to use the word innovation because I disagree with that in general. And I think maybe you think I'm going there. But I just think you're more likely to get people to go out of their way to do hard things if they are to be compensated extra. Does that make sense? And it doesn't necessarily mean innovation. It just means maybe putting in more
Can you
work.
give me an example?
Yeah, I mean, have you worked in a restaurant?
I have,
I
unfortunately.
use it because it's hard fucking work, and it's usually underpaid. But for instance, going in there and baking the bread they bake, where you have to wake up at 4 a.m. and make sure you're up before everybody else. Like bakers do that because they make their living doing that. I think if you ask most bakers if like, do you want to wake up at 4 a.m. and just have universal basic income and not get extra compensation, some will say yes, for sure. Some will be like, no, I'm going to do something else. Totally. I'm not like, what? I do this because it's my job, not because it's my passion. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like you passion seek in a situation where you're purely socialist.
What?
Do you not think you'd seek your passions if, like, think about this.
I know I would, but
right. But that's what I mean. Like, do you think most people are selfless in that, like, in their
I think
pursuit?
most people are closer to me in that they would probably not want to do one job for very long.
Sure.
Luckily,
And-
capitalism is
and-
making that kind of a necessity. But anyways,
Right. Do you think that? So do you think that's what? This is the point. I think that most people are like you and I, where we'd seek our passions out if we had the opportunity to do so, and not do the shitty jobs we don't want to do, but that often need to be done. Like it'd get bad. It'd just get bad to the point where it'd be like, hey, I'll give you extra food if you do this, and we're back into a system where it's no longer communist or socialist. Does that make sense?
I think
I think you
understand
constantly
your frame of
revert to
reference.
capitalism at a certain point. It just cycles back
don't.
in.
I don't, but that takes a lot of work to get to build up to that. And unfortunately, it also requires like a ton of education, which we're not that great at least in the States. To my,
Right.
my
And
liking.
education's a good example of a very thankless job as well.
Yes.
And on top of that, I don't know, like your standards for education would be very different, and not in a. And I don't think the economy has anything to do with it. I think we're bridging into the anarcho aspect of it. If you don't have a state, but you do have a government, then many different governments exist within the area, and the education differences are crazy, and that's how you get. I don't know. It's sort of like if everybody had their own standards for education in each county, it'd be very, very disparate as far as education is concerned, and
Do you think
facts
it's different from what we have now?
it's a little different. We do have federal standards, and the age of information makes it so that we do have a baseline, but I don't think
but
the age of
the
information
state-
doesn't continue.
And I'm sorry, when I say state, I mean what we think of in the states as a state, like California, Tennessee, whatever.
Well, the state in general is the federal government.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was trying to distinguish that. I'm not talking about the theory of it. I'm thinking of the nominal state in America.
Well, sure, but we
like
wouldn't have that, so we would
California or
only have the
whatever.
theory of the state, correct?
Oh, I'm talking about what we have right now. How it's not like a fully federal thing. There were some federal things that were made. I mean, even as far back as No Child Left Behind, where the federal government actually stepped in, and the I don't know, common standards that were set were very bad and not helpful, because it was trying to do cookie cutter on something that's very
Totally agree.
difficult from place to place. So we already do sort of have like
Yeah, Common Core is what that was called.
centralized. Well, Common Core came after, right? Like that's something that my little brothers like. They learned how to do like weird math that no
Well,
one
that
likes,
Common
apparently.
Core in general isn't just weird math, but yeah, the math is fucking weird. They use like lines and shit. The Japanese, I guess, do that though, and it works really well for them. Whatever, fuck it. If it works, it works. But no, it took out, and frankly, it was already this way. It's very white, east or west coast.
Oh yeah, that's what you mean.
Societal.
Where the idea came from.
Yeah. Because I obviously went to school for education.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was going to be a teacher and student taught and stuff, which is why I often bring up teaching as an example.
Okay.
And I worked in restaurants, so I bring that up as examples. So Common Core basically stripped culture out of the educational system.
Oh. Right.
So if you start using things like in an urban setting, like let's say urban Chicago, right? It's largely minority black school, right? And if you say things like Jake was reading a book about Aristotle and blah 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 and classical music, like it's not going to resonate as much as if you tuned it toward whatever the culture is, or so it can say. So instead of saying Jake, say whatever that particular culture. So maybe if it's like New Mexico and it's a largely Mexican school, changing Jake to Juan or something culturally that is relatable helps, like a large Cuban population or something. It helps a lot when they don't have to think about
they don't
like
have to do as much abstract thinking,
right? Because they can't understand like what the fuck are they talking about.
Yeah.
They're listening to Beethoven. Beethoven? What's a Beethoven? And they just don't know because culturally speaking, they may not like. They might as well. Like it's fine, but you get different test scores.
There could be a gap,
right? So, and that's what Common Core is. But this is what I'm talking about when I think of the microcosm of like anarcho-communism. Like you tune out the rest of the stuff because you don't. Does that make sense?
No. What do you mean you tune out?
So, you'd have communities of a certain number of people, and that would be the government, right? That would be, even though you don't have the state. Like, I feel like you continually revert to the ways we do it before because it's easier, not because it's better. So
yeah, what the devil you.
Yeah,
I gotcha.
Because we tend to
recreate our lived experience.
Like I think if you took a bunch of children and gave them robots without any personalities to help them survive and grow up, I think you'd see a capitalist system rise up out of that.
What?
I think
Okay.
like say you had like 100 people here and 100 people here or whatever in points A and B.
And they all have their own robot girlfriend. Okay.
Not a robot girlfriend, but just like no actual adults to like basically just a way for them to exist, or maybe they just start out being 15 years old and they can fend for themselves.
Is
they
this
have
Lord of the Flies.
Just listen. Just shut up. Shut your fucking mouth. No, just a way to isolate them from what any society that we've ever had. No history, no nothing. And they have their own language and everything. So they're isolated out on their own. I think if those two things meet, capitalism begins. If those two communities meet, capitalism begins. Because trade is like an inevitable thing. I don't know if they're selfless. They might be. But I think if they spend enough time apart from each other, they become so different that it just reverts back. Like, I think it's natural for us to want to gain an upper hand. And while I don't like that, I think we'd have to actively try not to be capitalist at all to ever have anything other than that. And I think we'd revert because we're lazy. We are. We're all lazy. You said it yourself. Like, you'd try to pursue passions. And I think most people would. I think, like, an overwhelming majority of people would start pursuing their like we'd all be artists and writers, and no one would be making anything. Like some people would be, but it would be like no one's gonna want to work in a factory. You know what I mean? Automation could help with this kind of thing, but I think you have to be post scarcity to even attempt it.
So I really don't want to talk about labor vouchers because that's kind of what would fix this. Like,
isn't a labor voucher? So it's just extra resources for labor, right?
not resources. Basically, it's like, I don't know, like you know how when you go to like a, well, they probably don't even do it now, but used to, you would go to an arcade, you would spend some money, get tickets, and then like those tickets hold like some sort of like fake value, and that's sort of like money, whatever. But you have to get whatever the store has. So like you're taking resources from like a central pot.
Are you pro this? Because Henry Ford did this. It didn't work.
No, that's like a capitalist version of,
it's the
what
same thing.
Marx was talking about. Yeah. Like, and it's hard because you got to talk about the labor theory of value.
Yeah, but in that scenario, wouldn't the government be Henry Ford?
No, the factory or whatever the worker owned business is probably not the right word. I don't know what you call that now that I think about it. But the entity that has resources that are owned by the workers, whatever that is. The
worker working in whatever job would be incentivized by receiving a voucher that did something. What would the voucher do?
It actually depends on, you know, how much labor you put in.
Because that sounds to me like a salary, even if it's not couched in monetary terms.
Right, and it's so complicated, but the thing is, it's not a currency. It doesn't actually exchange hands. Like, you don't trade people your labor vouchers for cigs or something. It doesn't work that way.
So what would the labor voucher give you?
It gives you whatever resources the commune has access to. Like, say you need bread, milk, whatever kind of...
So without the labor voucher, can you still have those things?
Well, yeah, I mean, everyone has some amount of something, so
it gives you more of those things,
right? So as you put more labor into the system, you're getting things that the system has already produced.
So that's just let's call them labor points. Then that's just money.
It's not money, but the amount of time it would take to explain it.
All right, so let's say I do some labor, you don't do some labor, and you're like, man, I could really use some more bread this week. I wasn't able to do some labor to get points. And then I said, well, that's fine. I can't give you my labor points because that would be capitalism, right? That would be an exchange of a currency so you could get some bread.
Right.
Okay, so if I use my points to buy bread and then I give you the bread, that's still capitalism in my opinion. That's bartering. I'm being nice. I'm not necessarily getting anything in return, but it's still money. Like I'm using those points to get bread to give to you. It doesn't seem to me that you can escape capitalism. I just don't think we can do it.
And that's fine. I'm probably not the person to make that argument, which is why I was talking about human nature.
Right, I know, but that's what I mean. I think that
you know about these things now. At least that there's like the concept is in your head, and maybe one of these other smart commies can.
well, I know, but what I'm saying is human nature would ultimately lead that to a capitalist system. Like you offered up the voucher system to me, and it immediately sounds like money. Even if it's not paper money, it's money. You're using it to pay for something, and you got it from selling your labor.
Yeah, again, I'm not going to try to defend this. I don't think I'm equipped, unfortunately.
Well, that's okay.
Yeah.
Commulist rise up? Is that a thing? Commulist?
I don't know. There's so many stupid things. The internet was a mistake.
Yeah. Bartering is too much of a pain in the ass. So yeah, I think money has a place. I think universal basic income in a capitalist system with socialist framework is great. I think that's the way it goes. I don't think you can escape capitalism based on human nature. Because, like, literally at any point when you're selling your labor, even if you don't consider it selling, even if you get something in return for your labor that someone who doesn't do the labor doesn't get, then you're in capitalist system.
You think that's capitalism, by the way? You think trade and barter is capitalism?
It's not. I mean, it's definitely part of capitalism. It's enough capitalism to make your thing not socialist.
Sure, but
that's all it needs to be. It doesn't need to be
wheels
capitalist.
Are on tanks and cars. That doesn't mean every tank is a car or vice versa. What I'm trying to say is you've had bartering and things like that before, especially in feudalism. That was like one of the main
bartering. Yeah, bartering happened early on in American history too, with the fur trade and stuff like that.
Exactly.
With the Native Americans, and
the libertarians think they can do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think they can. But
No.
what I'm saying is, regardless,
I just want to erode the idea in your head that capitalism is some sort of inherent human nature thing that we come back to, and I want to try and plant the seed in your mind. At least I don't care if you agree with me, you won't. But that your conception of human nature is informed by capitalism, which is why we constantly recreate.
I think that's definitely the case, but I just don't. But I think it's that way because it would revert. Every time we go down this avenue, and I've done it with plenty of people, although you are the least insufferable of them, I can tell you that. You've done a good job.
That's the first time someone said that to me. Thank you.
Well, there you go. Everybody gets one.
I'm getting better.
Yeah, I feel like once you get to a certain point within an anarcho-communist society, you create both a state and a system in which you have money, regardless of what it looks like. It's money. Like I just don't think you can ever fully get to that point, because at some point you're gonna have a disagreement with another group, and you're gonna want something they have, or they're gonna want something you have, or someone within the society is gonna have a disagreement. Like we're just not homogenous as people, and I think. Because you might value something in barter-wise more than someone else does, and I just don't think it works out. It always ends up reverting.
I'll tell you what. This isn't the last time you're going to do debate night?
No.
All right. Well, let me go back to the dirty commie circles that I have, and let
talk
me
about
ask
vouchers.
them- well, sure. I'll ask them how vouchers work. Number one. The next thing I'm going to ask is the state question, because personally, I actually do need to brush up better on that, because I honestly talk to liberals mostly. I can't even get them past the idea that capitalism is awesome. So this was a bit more developed, and I appreciate it.
Well, capitalism isn't awesome. It's just something that I think is required to have functioning economics in some capacity. Like person to person specifically, I think it's more ideal. You could barter, but I mean, like, once my labor is the thing I need to get the stuff, like that's it. It's over. It's no longer socialist. I mean, it is, but it can be mostly socialist, but it's not purely socialist. That's what I mean.
Sure.
So talk about the labor issue, because the labor issue is the issue. So if you get more than someone else due to your labor, it veers into capitalism. And I'm not saying it's going to crash into it and become that. I'm just saying avoiding it altogether is, by human nature, I think, not feasible. Unless we're totally in a post-scarcity, automated, nobody needs anything situation.
Ooh, yeah, won't that be fun? We won't be alive, but
no, but yeah,
it'll be that way for someone, hopefully.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on. You're not a tanky, and that was good.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Have a good night. I look forward to next time.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay, chat. I feel like a lot of you are on my side here. Haha, Jake Sid coming. And I say my side, even though I think Brett did fantastic.
A big reward!
Miltree Moon is next, is that correct? Miltree Moon. People's ability to correct themselves, their propensity not to do so. Okay. Jontron called communists like this commulist. Okay, so I missed some donations and stuff during our conversation. I don't like to do that during the conversation so much.
Big reward!
So now is your time to get your stuff in if you'd like to. Appreciate you. Haunted Wood, again, with the change.org. The people of Jake and Sarah streams to make Sarah a perma co-host. A Daylong Bang Prime sub.